Former Premiers Daniel Andrews and Mark McGowan have been awarded the Companion of the Order of Australia. Daniel Andrews, who was responsible for one of the world's harshest and longest lockdowns, which sparked mental health problems in children and a hotel quarantine program which caused almost 800 deaths. And former WA Premier Mark McGowan, whose draconian border policies separated families and left businesses struggling. Well, the Prime Minister first protected these premiers from the scrutiny of a royal commission that we need, if for nothing else, to make sure that we know what to do if another pandemic happens. And then today, he applauded their honours.
Both Daniel Andrews and Mark McGowan were very successful from the people who matter to their respective states in Victoria and Western Australia.
Well, former Victorian Premier Jeff Kennett said that the decision reeked of political interference, and here he was speaking to James McPherson a bit earlier on Sky.
So we are now giving the highest civilian award to an individual who has failed. We are recognising failure. I would like to know why it took so quickly and whether in fact there has been political interference in him being granted this award. And that wouldn't be surprising because the hallmark of Daniel's premiership was just that.
Joining me to discuss Liberal Senator Hollie Hughes and Deputy Chair of the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, Andrew Wallace. Welcome to you both. Hollie, what do you think? Do you think the premiers should have been given these honours?
Absolutely not. It is absolutely disgraceful. I think it demeans the awards. I think these awards were really set up and established to recognise volunteers in our community, people that put themselves out to assist others in Australia not do their job. And I think a lot of us could argue that both McGowan and Andrews did their job poorly. I think it's an insult to Victorians and to West Australians that health was included as part of the reasons for this recognition. When Andrews has left behind crippling debt, he's left behind significant mental health issues after the lockdowns that he put Victorians through. And McGowan, I mean, aside from cutting WA off from the rest of Australia and separating families in the most obscene way, the health system is crumbling over there. And somehow or other that's granted him this award. It is just disgusting, I think, on every level.
I mean, it should be the nurses, it should be the aged care workers who are recognised because they put their health on the line during the pandemic. Andrew Wallace, there's also the fact that they're not going to face scrutiny at a royal commission. The inquiry announced by Anthony Albanese doesn't compel the premiers, doesn't, force them to give evidence under subpoenas. And this is what is important, because if another pandemic hits, we do need to know what the right things are. Do we need masks? Do we need vaccines? A lot of people would argue, no, of course not. But, there does need to be a set of guidelines established, and without a royal commission, we can't get those proper recommendations.
Yeah, that's right, Shari. Look, please God, there'll never be another pandemic like what we saw. I'm sure that one would like to think that as governments in this country and across the world that we would have learnt our lessons from the latest pandemic. But unless we pull it apart, turn it upside down and give it a good shaking, we'll never really learn those lessons. And because of the federation, the way that we govern, the way that we are governed in this country, to really exclude the state governments and let's bearing in mind, it was the state governments that really ruled the roost in relation to health matters. To exclude them from a royal commission really smacks of political interference. And it was just absolutely a cover-up from the Prime Minister. But I'll tell you what's really interesting, Shari. It's a protection racket. But I'll tell you what's really interesting. I'm sure Hollie would agree with me on this. Whenever I've put anybody up for an Australia Day award or now a King's Birthday honours, it generally takes, I've never had one dealt with in under 18 months.
Yep.
Usually 2 years, somewhere around there. Isn't that interesting? And bearing in mind, politicians and judges, whoever's in public life, never get a gong whilst they are serving. But it's really interesting.
Very quick turnaround then.
Mark McGowan resigned almost 12 months ago to the day, and Daniel Andrews resigned 9 months ago. So
Very,
how the
very
hell
quick
could it
turnaround.
be that these two premiers had their applications approved, or whoever nominated them, in less than 12 months? I smell a rat.
No, good point. Now, Hollie, about 2 weeks ago, you lost your spot on the Senate pre-selection ticket. You were the top of the ticket. You're now number 4. That's considered an unwinnable spot, or it is an unwinnable spot. Instead, the number 1 on the ticket is one of your colleagues, Andrew Bragg. How do you feel? You know, there's been a lot of discussion within the Liberal Party about prioritising women, and I think the Sky audience, the Sky viewers, would know you as a very strong woman who campaigns for a lot of issues, not the least of which is anti-Semitism. How do you feel about being moved down to number 4 and replaced by a man?
Look, Andrew was always going to get pre-selected. At the end of the day, he's backed by the moderate faction within the Liberal Party, and they have been the dominant faction in the New South Wales division for a while. So he was always going to get there. The other people that were running against me, and I find it a little bit insulting that for some people there's a bit of an attitude you can replace one woman with another and it doesn't matter. I think you do need to look at merit. I think you need to look at experience, and I need to think, you know, what the contribution that's been made and could obviously continue to be being made would be considered. Unfortunately, it came down to about 150 pre-selectors in New South Wales who decided that I was not that woman to continue serving the party. It has been met with shock and horror pretty much across the parliament, all sides of the parliament. So, you know, it is what it is, though. That's what the New South Wales division has decided to do.
I understand that Peter Dutton didn't have anything to do with this, but the Shadow Treasurer, Angus Taylor, did. Is that right?
Yeah, so he certainly wrote a reference for another woman who was running in the race that she would make a great contribution. So the question was raised at the time, not only by Andrew and myself, who are current shadow ministerial colleagues of Angus Taylor's, but also, you know, which one of us, and a lot of our other colleagues raised the point, which one of us should be being replaced. So now we know what the intention was behind that. This is unprecedented,
really. Are you disappointed in Angus Taylor for doing that?
It's unprecedented for a colleague to actively campaign against other particularly shadow ministerial colleagues. Peter Dutton and Susan Lee run a very, very strong, united team. I think this has probably exhibited more personal ambition than ambition for the team, which is something that, you know, I wish Angus hadn't done.
Taylor's
Yeah, I think that his personal ambitions got in the way of keeping the unity in the team. Well, he's gone against Peter Dutton here. Peter Dutton had given a reference to Andrew Bragg and myself that he wanted to keep his shadow ministerial team together. And I think, you know, really Dennis Shanahan probably summed it up in the Australian best earlier when he said that Angus Taylor has to get serious about detail and present a more mature alternative in Parliament. And I don't think anyone could say it better than Dennis there. It's interesting that he's spending more time on factional politics in New South Wales, I think, than perhaps his portfolio.
Yeah, very, very strong remarks there, accusing the Shadow Treasurer of spending more time on
I don't know whether he spent more time, but he certainly showed some. And the history, you know, has always been, even if you don't like a colleague, you don't actively campaign against them.
No, indeed. Andrew Wallace, just to get your reaction to Peter Dutton's comments on the net zero target, he's now saying, or he has been saying for a while, that it doesn't look like the 2030 targets are going to be met, so we should push it back to 2050. What's your reaction to that?
I think there's probably only one person in the world who thinks that Labor will get us to 43% reduction by 2030, and that's Chris Bowen. Nobody believes that that's going to happen, particularly with the framework that they've laid out, the amount of solar panels that need to be laid on a daily basis, the amount of wind turbines that need to be constructed on a daily basis. It's just not going to happen. So we're committed to ensuring that we get to net zero by 2050, absolutely, but we want to ensure that we effectively hold the government to its commitments that it has made. You know, the reality is it's almost impossible for it to achieve it. But look, you know, the comments that Cameron Milner made earlier were really appropriate. Very few people are now talking about this. What people are absolutely focused on is cost of living.
Yeah, indeed.
The average
all right.
Australian
Apologies,
mortgage.
Andrew, but we are out of time right now. I've got to get to Kosher Garden next. Andrew Wallace, Hollie Hughes, great to see you both.
Thanks, Shari.